from what I understand, Joe Rogan had Douglas Murray, who is a horrible monster, okay? Douglas Murray is a right-wing reactionary piece of shit, massive Islamophobe, okay? Giant piece of shit, awful guy, and British on top of everything else. A repulsive little cretin. And of course, as expected from a repulsive little cretin like this, a major supporter of Israel's genocide. Douglas Murray has gotten a lot of newfound prominence in the aftermath of October 7, as he's become a wonderful little soldier for Zionist propaganda in the Western world. And in that process, he's become quite the champion against anti-Semitism, even though if I recall correctly, he's also said a bunch of anti-Semitic things in the past as well, to boot, ironically enough. Now, Joe Rogan brought forth Douglas Murray on the broadcast. Douglas Murray is awful piece of shit. Now, first half of the conversation, I believe, is just Douglas Murray berating Joe Rogan for having a bunch of anti-Semitic people on, okay? And there is a little, I can't believe I'm saying this, but although he is the worst person to make these statements, there is, I guess, some veracity to the claims being made here, as far as like Joe Rogan being ill-equipped to deal with someone who is spreading misinformation, right? Except, you know, when it's Douglas Murray making that case, it almost feels like he's just crying that he can't be the one who's spreading misinformation. And then the second half of the conversation is Douglas Murray trying to desperately defend Israel against comedian Dave Smith, libertarian comic Dave Smith, who I don't agree with on much, but as far as I've seen from some of his material talking about Israel, Dave Smith is Jewish himself, by the way. He's been a steadfast supporter of Palestinians. Like, he's one of those kinds of libertarians where he is seemingly, at the very least, a non-interventionist. Now, of course, yes, Douglas has a hard time because Israel's position is fundamentally indefensible for anyone who has even a semblance of conscience. Part of me thinks Douglas Murray is doing all this, so if you search his name in anti-Semitism, all of his defenses of Israel come up rather than his actual anti-Semitic statements. It's truly a frustrating pod. Both are right at certain points for all the wrong reasons. This interview is going to break you. Let's watch.
Why they're here. You know, it's a good question.
Do you think you've tilted one way?
Me personally?
No. Just with the guests you've had.
The guests, yeah, probably more tilted towards the idea that perhaps the way they've done it is barbaric.
Mm-hmm. But why do you think that is? Just out of interest. I'm just interested in your selection of guests because you're like the world's number one podcast.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think about it that way. I just think I'd like to talk to this person.
But can I just? Sorry, it's your show. But
sure.
If you're going to interview historians of the conflict or historians in general. Mm-hmm. Why would you get somebody like Ian Carroll or?
Yeah, but Ian Carroll, I didn't bring him on for that purpose. I brought him on because I want to find out, like, how does one get involved in the whole conspiracy theory business? Because his whole thing is.
Yeah, he's mad. Douglas Murray is mad at Joe Rogan for bringing on Ian Carroll, who is, I'll admit, somewhat hard to pin down at times. He just does like a little bit of noticing, right? Oh, I'm noticing things. But also, he's mad about Daryl Cooper, who I think is more overt with his ridiculous defenses of Adolf Hitler and the rise to power for Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime. So it's interesting because a couple years prior to this, I feel like Douglas Murray would be making the Daryl Smith arguments in general. So it's shocking that he has rebranded himself in this way. He's rebranded himself as a champion of Israel and also a champion against anti-Semitism.
It's just conspiracies.
Sure.
You know.
Corso, I know you didn't do it on purpose. That's why I timed you out for only 30 minutes instead of, permanently banning you. I know you messed up. It's all good.
But do you have any, there's been a tilt in the conversation, both conversations in the last couple of years, and it's largely to do with people who have appointed themselves experts who are not experts.
You mean like Ian? I don't think he appoints himself an expert in anything.
Who's that other dude who thinks he's an expert on Churchill?
Oh, Daryl Cooper does not think he's an expert.
In fact, I think it's everybody else is always calling him an expert, and he's like, oh, I'm just a history
Have you
guy."
ever absorbed any of his material? Have you ever consumed any of his podcasts or anything like
I
that?
tried.
Yeah?
It's pretty hard to listen to somebody who says, I don't know what I'm talking about, but now I'm going to talk. Or I don't know about this. Or I'm not.
You messed up by supporting Hamas. Imagine that. Nazis are equal to Hamas, bro. Imagine saying you're a journalist when you don't remain neutral like a true journalist is supposed to be. Remember, Nazis hated Jews. You can't claim that others are Nazis when you're acting like them, spreading misinformation like you do all the time. We have videos of it, idiot. I've never seen such a terrorist glazer in my life. You're the only reason why Twitch can't be removed from the U.S. And you're the reason why Twitch can be removed from the United States and have their company terminated. Why do Israel defenders just hallucinate so many different things at the same time? Are you okay? Are you all right, brother? The Dumpster King 101. Are you okay? Does it crypto Trump you and I'm Muslim, bitch? What the is this guy saying? Okay. Number one. Israel, both in its fundamental association with a ethno-supremacist, ethno-religious supremacist ideology that is exterminationist in principle, is closer to the Nazi regime than many other contemporary civilizations. So saying that Israel is a Nazi country is not far-fetched at all. I think there is value in Mad I'm Palestine. When it's cryo, not crypto. Cryo Trump? Not crypto, dumbass, learn to read. Oh, I thought you just wrote a typo. So that's number one. Israel is a Nazi country. Israel is doing Nazi-style exterminationist policies. Israel's doing a genocide. And secondly, Israel is a cryo Trump every 4 years. What? Okay. Israel also is far worse than Hamas. The Israeli occupying force is a far worse, far more violent, far more successfully violent genocidal institution than Hamas ever was or ever could be. Okay? Just putting that out there. Israel is worse than Hamas. Israel has done multiple October 7s pretty much every week since October 7. There's no way to make sense of that. The only way that you don't recognize that reality is if you simply just don't think that Palestinians are human beings. It isn't, since you don't seem to understand history, you're supporting a terrorist group that sang about a child's mother death on a cartoon show, praising her, ending herself. What are you talking about? Israel has killed every cartoonist in Gaza. Virtually. Israel's killed multiple mothers, thousands of mothers in Gaza, tens of thousands of children in Gaza. What the are you talking about? A cartoon? What are you saying right now? Anyway, seems like your mental illness is not going to get better, but they haven't, because Hamas ran that show, idiot. Dude, you're talking about a show. I'm talking about what Israel has done since October 7. Before October 7 as well, but especially since October 7. If your reaction to Israel's genocide is, but they made a cartoon one time, you're too stupid to have a conversation with. Just letting you know. You mad or not? Your October 7 facts are lies because I was there, idiot. What? You were at October 7? What were you doing? Dancing on the rooftops? What the were you doing? You said you were a Muslim and there at October 7? What's happening here? He's like, I was in Hamas. I was in Hamas and I learned that Hamas is terrorist. Anyway, let's keep going.
Not capable of debating this historian, but I'm going to just tell you what I think.
Bro, take your medication, Dumpster King. Take your medication. You're hallucinating.
Yeah, but that's not exactly what Daryl was saying. I mean, Daryl's point of view, however you feel about this, what Daryl's saying is he doesn't really like doing debates. He likes to do long format stuff where he can really explain his position.
If you throw a lot of out there, there's some point at which I'm just raising questions is not a valid thing. Mm-hmm. You're not raising questions. You're not asking questions. You're telling people something.
Do you think Daryl's doing that?
I think there's a whole bunch of guys doing that. I think Dave is doing that, very obviously. Dave's a comedian, but he's now mainly talking about Israel.
No,
I don't know if I'm mainly talking about Israel.
That's all I see you
have
on the internet
opinions.
doing.
Yeah, but that's
that might be what you've seen.
It's
But
just
I don't
you
think that's.
consuming
But
clips.
that is also your shtick now, isn't it?
Well, what do you mean by that's my shtick?
Well, you're not a geopolitics guy in general, are you?
I don't even know exactly what you're asking.
I'm saying you've decided, being a comedian, you've decided now to become somebody who talks about Israel.
This is not, I think you're incorrect. I don't think it's a decision. I just think you have long-form conversations, multiple of them. It's a huge event that's in the news, so it comes up. I don't think it's a thing. I think if you're on the outside, you'd say, oh, look, they're trying to get attention by talking about this very polarizing issue publicly. That's
but you do get attention from that. If you'd spent the last year speaking...
Dude, what do you mean? That's what you do. That's your whole career. Like, I'm sorry. It's not like Douglas Murray is a qualified actor here either. His qualifications are what? Instead of me chirping on Twitter, he writes for like The Spectator. You know what I mean? Like, there's no... The do you mean? Who has any qualifications? I would go so far as to say that at least Douglas Murray is an Israeli asset. He even received an award from the Israeli President Isaac Herzog for propaganda services in the midst of the Gaza genocide. It's an extraordinary privilege for me to align with the state of Israel, gushed Murray at the president's residence. I can't even find his old writing anymore, where I feel like he's written about Jews too. Like, am I making this up? And no, I'm not. I'm not mistaking him with Charles Murray, who wrote the IQ thing. Like, I'm pretty sure he wrote. I used to pull up his older work all the time in the beginning. I'm not talking about the bell curve guy. That's Charles Murray. Douglas Murray absolutely wrote. No, not a year ago. I'm saying multiple years ago, like before the post October 7. Post October 7, he's become like the number one defender of Israel. Even on October 2023, he said, yeah, the Nazis weren't as evil for doing the Holocaust as Hamas was for October 7. Douglas Murray's a Nazi, and top alt-right, alt-centrist Labor Party bureaucrats are huge fans of him and spread his Nazi filth internally as they were masquerading as anti-racist by smearing Corbyn and the left as anti-Semites. The level of depravity is unimaginable. A staff member of Labor's policy unit shared a clip of right-wing Islamophobic commentator Douglas Murray on BBC Daily Policy saying that all the political parties were refusing to confront the reality of terrorism comes from the religion of Islam. So he's a massive Islamophobe, yes. He's always been a massive Islamophobe. The author of The Strange Death of Europe, Douglas Murray, spoke about the European elites and the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, writing an article in the Hungary Journal, or the Hungary Journal wrote about his statements on Orban. Translate this, the English-German newspaper Taz covered it. Douglas Murray had just begun to explain the difference between Hamas and the Nazis when a rocket flew over his head. After recovering, the British journalist lifted off into the Israeli night. At conclusion of his TV interview with Piers Morgan, delivering a historical treatise that could cause worldwide sensation. The Nazis were actually ashamed of their actions, he claimed. SS battalions that spent all day shooting Jews in the back of the head and shoveling them in the pits had to get heavily drunk in the evenings to forget. Hamas fighters, however, who massacred Jews in Israel on October 7, proudly called their parents in Gaza afterwards. I'm not exaggerating. It's very interesting, and people need to understand that. There was the situation with the Nazis, who were also a genocidal anti-Semitic organization, but they tried to hide their crimes. Hamas was actually proud of it. That's what he said. Were the Nazis not so bad after all? Several German public figures called this interview magnificent. He literally said that Nazis that carried out the Holocaust were better than Hamas. Anyway, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I feel like he's written extensively on this stuff. Yeah, is Marine Le Pen really far right? By smearing all opponents as fascists, the left blurs the line between democracy and thuggery. Speaker at National Conservatism Conference accused of downplaying Holocaust after saying Germany mucked up. Douglas Murray said that people shouldn't be stopped from loving their country because the Germans mucked up twice. Prominent public intellectual Douglas Murray is facing criticism over comments he made at the National Conservatism Conference, which critics say downplayed the Holocaust and Nazism. Murray said there was nothing wrong with nationalism in Britain. It's just that there was something wrong with nationalism in Germany. I don't see why no one should be allowed to love their country because the Germans mucked up twice in a century. His comments have stoked controversy. There was absolutely something wrong with nationalism in the UK as well, by the way. It quite literally is the same kind of nationalism. Anyway. The fact that he's pro-Nazi makes him more aligned with Israel. I agree. Oh, this was the article I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you. So the Spectator deleted it since he became a mouthpiece for Israel. This is what I was looking for. Is now a good time to talk about Jews and money? The Jewish Museum in London thinks so. Perhaps is right. Motifs of Jewish financial chicanery have never really gone away or back. The internet age has a lot of memes about the Rothschilds, ruthless financiers, thinly veiled claims of Jewish duplicity to thrive as they haven't for several generations. The film at the start of the exhibition and museum in Camden to give some context. As the exhibition states, throughout history, there have been rich Jews and poor Jews. The claim that money essential to Jewish life plagued Jewish people for at least 2 millennia. Okay, maybe he's actually shitting on anti-Semitism in this article. I feel like I remember him saying anti-Semitic shit, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he was also, he's just like a racist, nationalist, Islamophobic person who isn't anti-Semitic. You can't call everything Nazi or you're never going to win again because it seems irrational, normal people. Do you know how many... Wait, but they aren't doing the Holocaust, so how is it the same? He's not pro-Nazi. 18-month subscriber. I'm sorry. If you try to defend Douglas Murray and in defense of Israel and then try to claim that Israel is not engaging in the same exact exterminationist, ethno-religious supremacist principles, you might also be a Nazi yourself, okay? Sorry, sucks to suck. But they aren't doing the Holocaust. Is not a good example. Is not a good counterexample. Yeah, they're not literally putting every Palestinian in a concentration camp and then killing them in gas chambers. So I guess it's not literally the Holocaust. What is there any reason to learn about the Holocaust then? Is there any reason to learn about the Holocaust then? Why have countless scholars, many of them who are also anti-Israel, mind you, even Israeli Jewish scholars of the Holocaust and genocide, why have they poured countless hours into understanding how this could have happened if dumb like you just go, well, it's not a one-to-one comparison. It is a Holocaust. Shut the up. Sorry, Ross Segal, famous Israeli Jewish Holocaust scholar Ross Segal. I guess your assessment is negligible because Foster DBZ noticed that it wasn't a one-to-one comparison. Excuse me, are they Sig Heiling? Excuse me, his name is Benjamin Netanyahu. It's not Adolf Hitler. It can't be the Holocaust. It's a singular event. Nothing can ever be compared to it. No, don't you do it. No, never again means just never again. It can never happen again because it happened one time and that's it. Never again. Thank you. Thank you for the brilliant perspective, dude. I had no idea. Cast aside countless hours of historical scholarly research because this chatter decided it's not a one-to-one comparison. There's no need to actually even litigate genocide. Someone alert the authorities. Why is the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court even prosecuting these guys for war crimes? Why is the International Court of Justice even entertaining the notion that Israel could ever do a genocide? They haven't completed it yet. Why do we even have intentionality as a marker for genocide? It's all about how you feel afterwards. It's all about land acknowledgments. It's not real fascism until it's from the fascism region of Italy in the 1930s. Thank you. Just having a discussion. View-y, my bad. Yeah, you're a moron, dude. I'm sorry. It's not a discussion. You're just an absolute moron. If the discussion around this is, well, you can't say it's the Holocaust. Israel is Jewish, and the Nazis killed Jews, so it's not the same. I'm the dumbest baby on the planet. Like, shut the up. Dumb 18-month subscriber. You should know better, stupid. That's why I'm so angry. When I see someone who's an 18-month subscriber who comes in with this kind of idiotic shit, it's different than a gray name. It's like, I failed. I failed in spectacular fashion. That you could be so devoid of critical thinking here. Why are you so mean to your supporters? Give them a year off. Give me a decade off. What, Lamau? Because, well, first of all, you're a 1-month subscriber. And there's an opportunity for you to learn shit in here. Okay? But if you're in here for 17 extra months as a subscriber and you're still making the dumbest argument, then, yeah, it's something that breaks me a little bit, you know? It means you've been in here for long enough that you should have probably accidentally learned a thing or two. You're literally saying genocide. Also, you're saying, why are you so mad at a dude who's been here for 18 months and is still like doing genocide apologia? It is absolutely appropriate to compare Israel as a nation state to the Nazis. it is absolutely appropriate to compare Zionism, the underpinning exterminationist, ethno-religious supremacist ideology that has created the nation state of Israel on indigenous land that it occupies illegally and kills a bunch of the indigenous population of, as the fascist guiding motivator that is akin to the same exact exterminationist policies of the Nazis. It's a fascist ideology, just like Nazism was a fascist ideology built around also ethno-supremacist values that revolved around exterminating people that it considered to be lesser than. Anyway, the f are we doing? All right, let's get to this.
Speaking about Myanmar, you would not be on my lips.
Yeah, but he does talk about Yemen constantly. He talks about a lot of things that aren't in the news.
Well, I tend to talk about the conflicts that my government is directly involved in, which I think is reasonable to me. But I don't quite get, like, what's all the appeal to authority stuff? I mean...
Yeah, look at this. No one is doing more to make the Star of David the new swastika than Israel. I have to wonder what the f is even going on in your mind, that this is your top priority now. But even if it is, Israel's more culpable here than any single person on Twitter you dislike. This person goes, same people who say that the Star of David has become the new swastika. Look at this. They carved a 6-pointer star on his head during imprisonment. You can see it. The liberated prisoner, Musab Katawi from Kalkilia. Like, what is this? What the f is this shit? You know what I mean? What are you supposed to do with this? What are you supposed to do with this? A fascist exterminationist Nazi government is using cultural landmarks and religious symbols in their exterminationist and ethno-supremacist fascist administration. What are we supposed to do? Look aside when this kind of atrocity happens and be like, no, dude, I'm going to offend the sensibilities of people who want to defend the apartheid state. You could suck my cock, you know? This is especially dangerous and especially disgusting if you're Jewish. What do you mean? That's why I make the comparison, not just the Nazis, but ISIS all the time. It's like if Muslims living in the Western world were constantly talking about how ISIS is awesome and it's really up and Islamophobic to criticize ISIS. Like, there's obviously no comparison you can make to that, especially because that was the lie that the same institutions that are positively associating Israel with Judaism, those very same institutions, as a defense mechanism, by the way, are literally the ones who lied and tried to negatively associate ISIS with the entirety of the Muslim population around the planet in an effort to justify the war on terror. Not comparable. Muslims globally denounced ISIS. No, I know it's... Yes, and also ISIS's primary victims were Muslims. My point isn't... oh, my God. My point is the negative association was falsely done, a false conflation by mainstream media in an effort to justify the war on terror was done between Muslims despite their global denouncement of ISIS for understandable reasons. Meanwhile, that very same media mechanism is making a positive association, again, that is a false conflation, but a positive association in the news between Judaism and Israel, even though Israel is doing a ton of ISIS shit. It blows my goddamn mind. I don't know if this is real. Why take a picture of this? Come on, chatter. 18 months. 76 years, but especially 18 months of this. You're really shocked? First of all, the picture was most likely taken by his family. That's number one. Number two, are you actually shocked if the Israeli authorities took this photo? Which they probably didn't, because this is a released prisoner at this point, a released hostage, a released Palestinian hostage from Israeli prisons. But would it be that shocking to you if an Israeli soldier actually took this photo after he carved it? It's been 18 months, man. Yeah, here, there's another one. Israeli police branded Star of David onto Palestinian's face. Judge refers incident involving 16 offers to internal affairs after no reasonable explanation given for lack of video evidence. This is from before October 7, from the 22nd of August in 2023, by the way. Just so you understand. They didn't just stop at this either. They branded the Star of David on what they had turned into rubble, basically, like areas that used to have apartments, and then take aerial photos of it because they're so proud of it. They put up menorahs in the middle of the Gaza Strip. They posted banners of Chabad in the middle of the Gaza Strip in all the buildings that they've defiled and desecrated and destroyed. This is very much a positive association that Israeli Jews have with Judaism. They brand everyone and all of their actions as though it is for Judaism across the board. It is a horrifying thing that they do. Also, retaliation against these sorts of atrocious behaviors would not be branded as terrorism, but doing this as a state is terrorism. There are a million examples of this, by the way. Yeah, Israel turning the Star of David into a symbol of genocide, racism, and hate, engraving it on the head of a Palestinian hostage, a pregnant woman's stomach, branding it on the face of a young man, drawing it with tanks over a wiped out city. Oh, it's not the pregnant woman, it's the back of a detainee, sorry. What are banners of Chabad? It's just like different brigades of the Israeli occupying force would post banners of Chabad in the middle of Gaza when they initially started their land invasion. What? All right, let's get back to this.
But you have to be an expert. Or
no, I think
authority
matters. I think authority matters, and I think that if you just throw a lot of shit out there and then say I'm not interested in the alternative views on this, and particularly when it's a counter narrative that is wildly off. And when you get people, look, I just feel we should get it out straight away. I feel you've opened the door to quite a lot of people who've now got a big platform, who have been throwing out counter-historical stuff of a very dangerous kind.
I don't know what they're using Star of David. I get it. They're like Nazis, but why use a symbol that Nazis used against Jews when they were a Jewish state? What do you mean? The Star of David is just a symbol of Judaism. It's what? It is that they are using Judaism and symbols, religious symbols of Judaism, as they're doing atrocious. It's not a Nazi symbol. You think that Star of David is a Nazi symbol? No. It is a far longer history than the nation state of Israel, which is 76 years old. Anyway.
You mean Daryl?
Dude, don't freaking ridicule people just because they don't know. I mean, it's kind of funny. Am I not supposed to laugh at that? Like, that's crazy.
Are you talking about Daryl?
Daryl, who's the other one?
I don't think Daryl has
Derek,
I don't think there's anything dangerous
what's
about
the other
what
guy? Derek, what's his name? Cooper, is it? Which one is it?
So that's
it's Daryl
Daryl
Cooper.
Cooper. Who's the other one? There was one I just checked on the way here. Daryl Cooper, and then Daryl Cooper, Ian Carroll. Look, these guys are not historians. They're not knowledgeable about anything.
No one's calling Ian Carroll.
No, but then why listen to their views on Churchill?
Daryl is incredibly knowledgeable.
He's not.
Yeah,
he's not. He's wildly. Several reasons. One is when he was offered to debate the current greatest living biographer of Churchill, he said, I can't, because he knows much more than me, and I admire his work and I've learned from it, but I can't possibly debate him. That's Andrew Roberts.
But you don't have to be able to debate people to have opinions.
No, you don't have to debate people.
If it's not your thing.
But if you, for instance, but if you say, I've decided that Churchill is the bad guy in World War II.
Somebody said.
Neither Carroll nor Cooper have said that?
Well, listen, I don't know what Carroll said, but Daryl Cooper has not said that. What he said was he jokes with his friend Jocko, who's an Anglo-Saxon. He jokes with him. I think that Churchill was the secret villain of World War II. And what he's saying is by Churchill's...
Oh, he was joking. Yo, my bad, bro. Because it wasn't directed towards Jocko Willink, as a matter of fact. It was randomly tweeted out, if I recall correctly, and then also defended on the Tucker Carlson broadcast. I mean, look, the Daryl guy is, he is perhaps a little bit too sympathetic to young Adolf, a misunderstood guy by his own words, who just, made a sequence of mistakes. But also on top of that, he engages in far too much historical revisionism, or just like simply doesn't understand history and makes a lot of mistakes while he's talking about young Adolf. Okay. And when you do all of those things, in unison, it comes across like you maybe like young Adolf a little bit. You might be a little fan of young Adolf. Okay, that's
actions. The war escalated. He's not.
Yeah, Daryl, who famously on Joe Rogan said, Adolf is the kind of guy you can go fishing with, or something like that. Yeah, is he the guy who said Hitler had to deal with the Jew problem? Yeah, he did. He did say that. Oh my God, he said that on Tucker Carlson. That was so insane. Now, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, He basically assumed the position of the Nazi government at the time as a valid position, that like Jews were a problem. It's just that like Hitler was going about it the wrong way, kind of, or he just had no other options but to kill them because it would be more humane than to let them continue starving. And it's like, okay, but the starting point is that Jews are a problem and they're not. So what the are you talking about? Like, that's an insane statement to make in and of itself, right? Anyway, this is precisely the reason why I think like Douglas Murray is the worst possible person to talk about this. But also, there is a valid critique here against Joe Rogan to have guys like this on. You can have convos. I don't give a shit. You can have convos with anyone you want. But like the reality of the matter is, if you have your own personal opinions, if you think like anti-Semitism is unacceptable, for example, if you think that racism is unacceptable, for example, and then you have a dude who is maybe anti-Semitic, and you are not equipped enough to deal with it as the largest podcaster on the planet, well, then you're being a little irresponsible with your platform. Obviously, Joe Rogan is going to tell you, who the fuck are you to tell me I can't be responsible with my platform? And there's not much you can say to that. You know what I mean? Especially not much even Douglas Murray can say to that. Why? Because Douglas Murray is supposed to be a free speech warrior. But of course, as many free speech warriors are, he hates free speech when it comes to criticizing little old Israel.
He's not saying anything.
He's not just asking questions, then, is he?
No, but the claim isn't that he's just asking questions. Yeah, he has a point of view.
You can explain this better. He literally says he's joking.
In the comment, he goes, listen, I'm being hyperbolic. And then he once again disclaimed, he goes, and I'm not claiming Churchill committed the most atrocities or was the worst part. But in many ways, I do view him as the chief villain, as my hyperbolic, provocative statement. But
yeah, and okay, see, again, every party is ill-equipped to have this conversation because I remember the exact details. And it wasn't just that. He had a reasoning for why he thought Churchill was a chief villain. And part of the reasoning for why Churchill was a chief villain was because he also took Hitler's words verbatim when Hitler said, "Oh, I have no smoke for England." Like he made it seem as though Churchill was the one who escalated against Nazi Germany. Another way to weirdly find yourself in defense of Nazi Germany's actions. Yeah, no, he doesn't think, I don't think he thinks Churchill was a villain because of the Bengal famine chatters. That's not what the argument here. Okay?
But
what's
Douglas,
the point of that?
Well, okay, but Pat Buchanan wrote an entire book on this. Is he not allowed? Is he not an expert? Is he not allowed to be interviewed?
He's certainly not an expert. He can be interviewed. I've watched Pat Buchanan debate. I watched Pat Buchanan debate against Churchill historians, and he was absolutely leveled because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
When did Pat Buchanan debate and get leveled?
About 20 years ago.
I'm just curious.
He debated against Andrew Roberts and several other historians at Intelligence Squared in London. I was there. He didn't know what he was talking about. He had a contrary view, and it was interesting and stimulating to hear. But if you only get the contrary view, which is, isn't it fun if we all pretend Churchill was the bad guy of the 20th century? At some point, you're going to lead people down a path where they think that's the view. And that's...
Okay, every time I hear a guy with this accent try to defend Churchill, I become more in line with the position of Daryl, whatever the okay? You're the worst. You're the worst orator for your own cause in this situation, okay? I'm beginning to like Churchill less. And I didn't even like Churchill. He is a monster. He's just not the primary monster of World War II. It's crazy. I know. God damn, this guy's annoying. Okay. Why do you keep defending Churchill? Yeah, me, a famous Churchill defender. No, dumb Churchill is a monster in his own right. Just not the chief villain of World War II. That is an insane statement to make. Okay? The are you saying? In a list of bad guys during World War II, Churchill doesn't crack the top 3 at the very least. Okay? You got Imperial Japan. You got the Italians. You got a whole bunch of different Nazis involved, not just Adolf Hitler. Okay? Yeah, he got overshadowed.
Of the most profound kind.
I don't think that's what he's trying to do.
I think that's exactly what they're doing. And the problem is that because your own platform has come about because you're a very successful comedian and much more, and you do ask questions, and you are interested. But there are a lot of people who have come along, partly I think because they've come on this show, who have come along and they've decided, I can play this double game. On the one hand, I'm going to push really edgy and frankly sometimes horrific opinions. And then if you say, that's wrong, they say, I'm a comedian.
But wait a minute.
How can you tell me I'm just a comedian?
Well,
I'm just throwing stuff out
What
there.
horrific opinions that's wrong? are you talking about specifically?
Once guys like this get into very obvious stuff, which is
guys like Daryl,
the ones I'm describing.
You
very
need to listen to Daryl to really understand what he's saying. If you take Daryl's words out of context, Daryl has some of the most nuanced, balanced, and charitable views
on Adolf Hitler. It's true. He does. He has some of the most nuanced, balanced, and charitable views on Adolf Hitler, to be fair. God, I hate Douglas Murray so much. But also, you know, he does. He's so neutral on Hitler. It's weird. That's what I think.
On all the figures in history.
Well, particularly Hitler, it seems.
No, you're wrong.
True.
You're wrong.
No.
He doesn't. What did he call him? How did he describe him?
I think he compared him to a methed out psychopath who was holding an entire nation of people hostage, I believe was the way
He also
put it.
said on here that
I don't even think Dave Smith will agree to that, by the way. I think he's just dick riding right now because he knows Joe likes him. But like anyone who's at least even a little bit knowledgeable about the Holocaust knows that it's not just Adolf Hitler holding the goddamn nation hostage, okay? Again, going back to the same thing that I was saying to the Israel dick rider earlier, okay? Why is there any reason to learn about how this can ever happen if we're just never gonna look at the details? No, it wasn't just one guy who hypnotized the entire nation, you know? Yeah, he was on so much meth and actually did find the magical artifacts in the Arctic Circle and was able to use said magical artifacts to hypnotize the entire German nation.
That he wasn't anti-Semitic until the Holocaust. There were no speeches of Hitler's in the 1930s.
No, again, this is
no. He said he was not public about it.
He said he was downplaying it to win over. He said there was a period where he was downplaying it to win over popular support.
Dude, I wish I had defenders of mine at a level of prominence as Joe Rogan, just dick riding me this hard, and I don't even say dumb shit like what Daryl has said. Me, dude.
There is no historian of World War II who thinks that Hitler was downplaying anti-Semitism in the 1930s. That was what he was doing. He wrote a book about it in the 1920s. He got to power on it, and he grew his power on the back of it.
Yeah.
The idea...
Okay, so the issue here is, again, I can't stand this. I hate Douglas Murray. I'm just going to keep repeating that over and over again. But at most, even if you're going to say it's a little weird how much this Daryl guy, you know, hands it to Hitler, right? Even if that's not your main gripe, the gripe should be how much ahistorical, how much of Daryl's analysis revolves around, you know, being wrong about history.
Yeah, that you can argue that in the 1930s, Adolf Hitler was downplaying...
Did you forget you say U.S. deserved 9/11? One of my most vindicated takes of all time, dude. My problem is I said it in 2019 when many dumb had no idea what I was talking about. And then literally, lo and behold, 3 years out or 2 years after the fact, in the 20th anniversary of 9/11, everybody caught wind of Operation Cyclone. But this actually predated Operation Cyclone. But people were like, oh my God, turns out I understand it now. I understand what he was referencing when he said that.
The anti-Semitism. Like, there's no historian who would agree with that. So why would you throw out the idea that in the 1930s, Hitler was not being anti-Semitic in public? That was...
Murray's minimizing the nationalism component of Hitler's rise because he's the biggest defender of nationalism as a concept. Yeah. It's odd that he himself is, I guess, mad at Hitler for his methods, but not like the ideology and practice, or at least his anger towards Hitler is that he went after Jews. And if he hadn't gone after Jews, but instead everybody else, because the Holocaust, what, like 15 million total? You know, shave off 6 of those, the Jewish part of the Holocaust, and all of a sudden Douglas is very much on board, right? He is quite literally a open nationalist. He's, as I showed you before, he's written extensively on nationalism as a concept. He is a major advocate of nationalism as a concept, and nationalism specifically in Britain. He also even said that the Nazis were depressed after doing the Holocaust. He said that they were better than Hamas because although they did the Holocaust, they felt bad about it after doing the Holocaust. That he said that in defense of Israel, by the way, after He said that in defense of Israel after October 7th and received an award for it by the Israeli government. If you want to understand how the Israeli mentality is on this sort of thing.
Was what he was doing in public.
World War II was 100 mil minimum. Can you separate the Holocaust from the wars? Yes. If we're talking about simply the extermination in the camps, then that's because that's what I'm specifically talking about.
Announces to the German parliament what he wants to do. So when you're throwing out claims like he was keeping it down in the 1930s, first of all, what are you doing? And secondly, why?
Okay. I mean, I think that it's kind of hard because I don't even know exactly what Daryl's point on that was. And so I'm not really in a position to argue what he was saying there. I don't think you're giving him the most charitable interpretation.
I don't need to give him the most charitable interpretation to be able to see what he's doing.
I think you're strawmanning him, I should say.
Look, anyone can look up what he said on this show and others, what these two guys in particular have said on repeated podcasts with both of you. It's an attempt to downplay Hitler and always to do down church.
I don't think you downplayed Hitler.
Whatever way they can. No, I said in conversations with you and others, this is the shtick of these guys. They've decided it's edgy and funny, and I think this is very, very interesting and also very...
Is Dave Smith a good guy in this debate because he's glazing the Hitler guy quite a bit, Lamau? Yes. It's even funnier when you find out that Dave Smith is also Jewish himself. Douglas Murray, as far as I might be mistaken, pretty sure Douglas Murray is the Gentile who is defending Israel, and Dave Smith is the Jew defending Palestinians. We haven't gotten to that part of the broadcast yet, though. This is just, weirdly enough, Dave Smith and Joe Rogan defending people who have said some suspicious things about Jews. But yes, Dave Smith is Jewish.
Dangerous, because we live in an era now that the right has got some mojo back in America. We saw years of crazy left overreach where they tried to make us all say the craziest things. And completely predictably, there are now figures on the right playing with really dark and ugly stuff on their side.
I agree with that.
And they are mainstreaming
I don't
this,
think
and I
Daryl's
think
doing
it's partly being mainstreamed by the two people I just described. And both of you have kept speaking to these people. And you don't get on the historians who know about this. And that's just alarming to me.
Well, can I just say, because I kind of do agree with part of what you said there. Like, I do think it is true that almost as a reaction to like the woke insanity that we've seen on the left, and I think nobody's been a more effective critic of that than you. I do think there has kind of been a right-wing reaction that has embraced racialism and is dangerous and not a good path to go down.
And now they're flirting with Holocaust denial and
yes,
Hitler and absolving Hitler of blame and much more.
I think you're wrong.
Dog, you literally did an insane defense of Nazis, like almost as insane as the Daryl dude that you're talking about, to defend Israel that's doing its own version of the Holocaust right now. To defend that, you said, well, Hamas are worse than the Nazis because at least the Nazis felt bad and drank away their sorrows after doing the Holocaust. Shut the up, Douglas Murray. I can't listen to him. I'm sorry. He's the worst person to defend. He is the worst person to be like, oh, I'm very much against anti-Semitism. How dare you? How dare you have anti-Semites who are not pro-Israel on your show? If you have anti-Semites, they better be pro-Israel, like me. Like me, Douglas Murray. How dare you, Joe? Anyway, apparently they start talking about Israel in like an hour.
Much more learned historians on the subject of the origins of World War II. And the whole thing got lost in all of this sort of mad puzzle of views about iron ore production.
Yeah. At least the Nazis were alcoholic Christians rather than those who cannot drink alcohol by way of Islam, which is the most dangerous ideology.
Bavarian forest and this sort of thing. And I remember everyone was all over the place, and the moderator turned to the historian Andrew Roberts and said, Andrew Roberts, why did World War II begin? And he said, World War II began because Hitler invaded Poland. And those moments come along quite often at the moment, which is, yes, there's an awful lot of very interesting things to look into. There's a lot of very interesting things going on which we should all be able to talk about and do talk about. But sometimes you have to remember the origin causes of things as well, and you have to stick to keeping that in mind.
Yeah, well,
I think that a lot of people are pretty bad at the moment of keeping that in mind. Like you can concede Ukrainian corruption, you can concede all sorts of things.
What do you say to people who think both sides are legitimate and violent? Is there any way to be charitable? Yeah, just ask them if they think that both sides had some good ideas and were and had legitimate gripes in the Holocaust, like in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Did the Jews there deserve it? They fought back. Did the resistance groups that formed against Nazis, did they deserve it, you think? No, of course not, because, that's in the rearview mirror. So anyone who says both sides is a coward, okay? Are both sides equally responsible for chattel slavery? Well, the Nat Turner Rebellion happened, you know what I mean? Which is worse? You got people who are being dominated by colonial power, and then you got people who are resisting against said colonial power, only increasing the intensity and the militancy against said colonial power as the colonial power becomes more violent. I don't with that both sides. Ironically enough, that's it's because of the both sides that was presented to me on the Piers Morgan broadcast that I yelled at that British guy with the pink hair. Remember? You don't know anything.
And still not lose sight of the thing of, if Russia rolls tanks into neighboring countries, it can't be allowed.
Oh, well, listen, okay, so on that, I think we have an area of agreement. And I do think, even while I much prefer the path that Donald Trump is pursuing to the path that Joe Biden pursued when it comes to the war in Ukraine, and of course this is, Donald Trump's thing is once you piss him off, he's going to call you every bad nickname that there is. But when
sometimes when you don't piss him off,
well, sure. But when he said
the Danes come to mind.
I believe he said that Zelensky started the war,
yes,
or something like that, which is okay, all right, that's a little bit. Really? Bad in the world is somehow a consequence of U.S. meddling. I also think that there's people on the other side here, maybe the people who are more neocon leaning, more war hawky leaning. They have a tendency to only focus on the bad things that everybody else does and act like our policies have no impact on this.
Should be ridiculous.
So very specifically, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and I'll just get two bullet points on this, and we could talk about a lot of this. But look, number one, in 2008, as you well know, right, the Joe Biden CIA director, who was the CIA director for the entire war up until Donald Trump just came back in, he wrote the Net Means Net memo to Condoleezza Rice, a private cable to the then Secretary of State when he was ambassador to Russia, to let her know that this flirting with bringing Ukraine into NATO is...
Okay, they're talking about Ukraine. When they get to Israel, goddamn...
into a street protest against a democratically elected president of Ukraine. And the whole issue...
Oh my God, he's still talking about Ukraine. What the...
I swear, and they act as one of the backers of trying to influence.
No matter what. So, I don't know.
Well,
both major... Maybe.
For sure.
They should try with the political class more if they're trying to turn us anti-Israel or something like that, because both major parties in this country will fund and unconditionally support Israel no matter what. So, I don't know.
Well, I don't know no matter what, but, Qatar is definitely trying to influence things their way as other countries.
Dude, it's so funny to claim Qatar is somehow responsible for, influencing people into believing anti-Semitic or whatever. Qatar itself is the Switzerland of the Middle East, okay? The Gulf states. That's it. There has to be a place where everyone can get together and have diplomatic relations, and that's what Qatar is. That's it. There also has to be a place where if you want to fund Hamas, you got to go through someone, if you're Benjamin Netanyahu, and that's where the Hamas guys are. So you got to go through Qatar. It's not like it's deliberately using any of its social or political capital to be yeah, everyone should be anti-Semitic. No, you're just saying that because you're mad that they have Al Jazeera.
Countries are. I cite it as an example of something that's very interesting, which is an attempt to interfere in American public life, which gets almost no attention. And indeed, the governments, whether Democrat or Republican, still seem to adore the Qataris. Even as they act as one of the backers of terrorist groups across the Middle East and elsewhere. And I cannot understand why it doesn't get more attention.
Well, according to the former defense minister of Israel, they were begging Qatar to pour that money into Hamas.
No, that's not what happened.
Well, that's what he said.
Yeah,
his words, begging.
You're referring to the funding of Hamas in the 2010s.
Yes.
Yeah, no. The Qataris poured the money in. And the question on the Israeli side was, what are you allowed to do with funds that were going into Gaza? And the Israelis allowed the funds to go from Qatar to Gaza.
I think a little bit more than that. I think when the funds dried up, Netanyahu sent the head of the Mossad in there to beg him to keep the funds going.
Again, I'm not sure. It's like quoting the head of the CIA, quoting the head of the Mossad. So maybe. But
maybe?
That's not the evidence.
Oh, so now you don't want to believe the Mossad. Okay, got it.
Of the last 18 years.
You can. Okay, so I guess I think I'm allowed to quote powerful people when they admit what they're doing. It's
I know, but again, it's just an interesting thing because again, it's a discipline about this, which is, do I only quote powerful people when they say the odd thing that I agree with, or do I simultaneously distrust all powerful people. It's just an interesting rhetorical...
Well, no, I mean, I think that obviously, like, I don't blindly trust anyone in the political class or the media class for that matter either. But when they admit things that are like very against their interest to admit and kind of give away the whole game that now they're pretending doesn't
matter. Are you sure whether it's the CIA
or
Mossad that it isn't just if they say something that you happen to want to be the case?
Well, this is kind of...
Wait, what do you mean? So primary sources are irrelevant if I disagree and it makes my position indefensible? What is the argument from Douglas Murray here? What the Yo, Dave is not even like the most well-read on this and I'm sure he would openly and readily admit that. And he's already cooking them. To be fair, it is an indefensible position. Defending Israel is so difficult. If you have a moral compass, you don't really need much information, but especially if you have information like Dave does, it literally becomes an impossible endeavor. You will always look like a monstrous animal.
Kind of like saying if I were to end on trial and I were to, like, I'm the prosecution and I'd enter into evidence a written confession by the defendant, and you go, well, are you only entering this in because this kind of goes along with your case? Like, I suppose we're all guilty of having these incentives to some degree, but I do think it's a relevant detail that the former defense secretary admitted this. And by the way, Netanyahu's admitted this, Ehud Barak has admitted this.
They admitted that they allowed funds to go from Qatar to Hamas because Hamas was governing the Gaza.
For the reason of preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state.
No, that was not the case.
That is what Netanyahu said. That is what Ehud Barak said. No. It's all
There's
up and down.
One
well, you can't believe Benjamin Netanyahu. You can't believe him because it makes my argument look unsustainable. How dare you, sir? Why would you believe Benjamin Netanyahu? He did. He literally said that. He said, we can always deal with Hamas. The deliberate reasons as to why Israel played a formative role in propping up Hamas was because they made a somewhat correct prediction and a very incorrect one. But the correct prediction that they made was that, well, these guys are Islamist fundamentalists and they will never be able to get broad support from the Western world in the same way that like a guy like Ghassan Kanafani could because he was a author and also Christian. They assassinated all of the secular socialist leadership of the Palestinian resistance, and they basically propped up the Islamist fundamentalist one, assuming that the Islamist fundamentalist group would never actually modify their position or moderate their position ever, right? Which they did. Hamas literally did do that, for the record, and has. And that's it. That's their mistake was, as long as we keep Hamas propped up, we can always deal with it militarily. Except that was a major mistake because you couldn't deal with it militarily on October 7. That's number one. And number two, they did become way more interested in, instead of just simply politically dominating the Gaza Strip, doing anything and everything in their power to end the occupation, including but not limited to creating coalitions with every other faction with the exception of the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority is a part of the Israeli security apparatus. But virtually every every faction, including former Fatah, that like not that long ago facilitated a coup d'etat against Hamas after the outcome of the election didn't go their way. So these guys are only invested in one thing and one thing only, which is the end of the occupation.
There's one recording of Netanyahu saying something along those lines. But look, I mean, we should get onto it.
I could read you the quotes from Ehud Barak as well.
No, I know.
It's all of them have talked about it.
The situation. Let's get onto it. The situation there and the war of the last 18 months now, more than 18 months in the Middle East, is a result not of that, but of Hamas deciding to start another war with Israel and trying to...
Hamas. It's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas.
But you don't think if they were being propped up by Israel, that has nothing to do with the group?
They were not being propped up by Israel. The reason why Hamas were in power, as you know, much against the interests of the Israelis, was that they were voted into power after the Israelis withdrew from Gaza in 2005. Condoleezza Rice and other American statesfolk insisted that the Palestinians should have elections straight after the Israeli withdrawal. They had elections, perhaps unwisely, and Hamas won. And then...
Yeah. Ironically enough, Fatah told George W. Bush to not have elections because they were incredibly unpopular. Part of the reason why they were incredibly unpopular was because they were seen, understandably so, by the Palestinian population as collaborators with the Israeli state at that point and also deeply corrupt. Hamas, on the other hand, given their Islamist fundamentalist background at that stage especially, and their interest in militarily resisting the apartheid state, were seen as less corruptible forces amongst the Palestinian population that chose to vote in the Gaza Strip. Even with all of that, however, Hamas actually won the election, I believe, by like 3%. So it wasn't like a wide popular majority. They didn't have the popular mandate at the time in Gaza. What came afterwards was then an additional up of George W. Bush's administration, where they said, okay, let's go do a coup d'etat and forcibly overtake the Gaza Strip and give the administrative capacity of the Gaza Strip to the party that didn't actually win. Well, lo and behold, Hamas actually won that battle and took complete control over the Gaza Strip.
Didn't have another election again and ruled the Gaza for 18 years until they finally got the great fruit of their labors on the 7th of October, 2023. And when...
Yeah, they only won a plurality, not even a majority. They won, no, it wasn't 48%. No, it was not. I think it was like 36% or something. And the Fatah party had like 32% or something. I'm getting the numbers wrong. But it was the plurality. Oh, it was 44 to 41. 44 to 41. Anyway, none of this matters. The population that's alive currently could not have even voted at the time. And the election in and of itself is completely inconsequential because Israel did not exactly stop its apartheid activities in the West Bank, nor its complete restriction of everyday existence for the Palestinians in Gaza.
Around southern Israel, massacring everyone they could, including young people at a dance party, and then caused in turn the destruction of the place that they were meant to be governing. It's the whole thing is a great tragedy, and all of it is at the feet of Hamas.
I certainly agree with you that it's a great tragedy, and I do, I think it's. When you accuse me of using the quotes that kind of, back up what I believe, I think it's very convenient here to remove all responsibility from the Israelis. Like, even if I'm telling you that you have these quotes, I mean, I'm not talking about fringe figures. We could read.
I don't even agree with, like, Hamas was propped up by Benjamin Netanyahu arguments either. Like, even that in and of itself is not the whole picture. It's 75 years of apartheid and occupation that started at the inflection point with an ethnic cleansing campaign where 15,000 Palestinians were exterminated and 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly removed from their ancestral homes, never to be able to return. That is the Nakba. That is how the Israeli state was implemented. That is the inception of the Israeli state. They did horrifying war crimes during the Nakba.
Through the list of people who have admitted what the strategy was with them funding Hamas and propping them up.
Yeah, but we talking about Hamas. Yeah, but it doesn't matter because before Hamas, there was a PLO. They called them the terrorists. There's always a group that is going to resist because resistance is inevitable. Would you sit back and get over? Would you sit back and watch your family members get murdered? Probably not, right? Like, the idea that this is just Hamas is idiotic. The Palestinian resistance against the Zionist brigades initially, some of which were direct terror groups, they called themselves terrorists, and then the Israeli occupying force is perfectly valid, completely valid, through and through. It is the moral thing to do. It's ridiculous. Anyone who tells you that it is immoral that they resisted is delusional, okay? They just do not see the Palestinians as people. That's the point. What the are we talking about? Yeah, sorry. Oh, are you raping us to death? Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the rest of the world would not see us as humans, so I guess I should just die.
But hold on, let me just say, so if you're going to tell me Israel props up this terrorist organization in order to kill the peace process, in order to make sure that the international community gives them a no one. By the way, Smotrich, right, the finance minister, okay, he's on record saying, look, Hamas is an asset. The Palestinian Authority, they're the liability. Hamas is an asset because then we can tell the international community, well, look, what do you want us to do? There's a terrorist organization here. We can't do business with them. And then even Ehud Barak admitted, like, this was also so that liberal Israelis, if it was the Palestinian Authority, they'd be like, hey, we should make a deal with them. But since it's Hamas, they can't. Okay, so if Israel props up this terrorist organization and then as a response to them committing a horrific act of terrorism, decides to level the entire place and just slaughter women and children in large numbers.
It didn't decide to do that, and it didn't do that. But yeah,
it didn't level the place. Hasn't been destroyed.
Gaza is pretty leveled by now.
Yeah,
but it did not go in to level the place like that. No.
Okay, they went in and leveled.
Oh, so they just like slipped and fell into genocide. Man, that's a great take, Douglas. You are doing a fantastic job.
The place, but that wasn't their intention.
Let's just go back to the beginning if we can.
Sure,
because it's important.
Yeah. So when the Israeli defense minister at the time, who is no longer the Israeli defense minister, but it's still very much a war criminal for this statement amongst many other actions that he took, on October 8th said, "We are fighting human animals. That is precisely the reason why we will cut off the electricity, food, and water to the Gaza Strip and all aid to the Gaza Strip because we're fighting human animals. We're not fighting humans. We're fighting beasts." When he said that wasn't intentionality enough for Douglas Murray to indicate that these guys were, going to do everything that they've done for the past 18 months. It was just a, oops, I slipped and I did a genocide moment. Got it.
Since you're interested in the question of the Palestinian state, the Palestinians were given another state in 2005. When every single Jew was removed from Gaza.
Oh my God! First of all, they weren't supposed to be there to begin with, and secondly, it was 5,000 Israeli settlers. Okay, and the Palestinians were not given a state. You can't have a state if you don't have any control over your borders. If you don't have a goddamn airport, and you did have an airport, as a matter of fact, for the record, they did. Israel bombed it, and then never allowed them to rebuild it. Didn't allow them to get concrete, didn't allow them to get numerous forms of humanitarian aid for literally the most selfish, erroneous, humiliating reasons, as a matter of fact, including pasta and cookies. They wouldn't allow pasta and cookies in the Gaza Strip, okay? As a mechanism of control and a mechanism of humiliation, then, yeah, you don't have a state. What are you talking about?
By the IDF, and when even the graves of Israelis in Gaza were dug up and taken into the rest of Israel. Of all of the what-ifs of Palestinian Arab history, the era since 2005 should be one of the great what-ifs, which is, what if the American taxpayers' money that was poured into Gaza, the European Union taxpayer money that was poured into Gaza, had been used by a government in Gaza to build a state that lived side by side with their Israeli neighbors and flourished. And it's not like the money wasn't there. It's not like there wasn't the international will. Ismail Haniyeh and the other leaders of Hamas used that money, as you know, to make themselves billionaires and to buy themselves and their kids condos in Qatar to live extremely well.
They're dead. They're all dead. They're all dead. Israel killed all of them. The are you talking about? Turns out it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or not. God, what a stupid ass talking point, dude. They're all dead. Their whole families are dead. This guy can't stop. How'd they make tunnels with no concrete? Magic, dude. Magic. They made it with magic. Okay? They made it with magic. That's how they made the tunnels. How they make tunnels with no concrete? They're tunnels. So, Sam, what will you say this time when your predictions are wrong? First, Russia. No, China. Seems to like you don't understand anything outside of USA law. I do like your domestic views, but you are clueless on foreign nations. Shut the up, you little bitch. You Israel dick-riding Nazi piece of shit. Suck my dick. Stop downplaying it, you. You are an idiot. Brain dead liberals, dude. Holy shit. Suck my dick from the back. Stupid ass Nazi bitch. I am liberal, but also Hamas is Nazi. I am liberal defender of Nazi Israel. You.
Whilst withholding the money from the Palestinian people, whilst building their network.
I like your take. I like your policy, domestic policy, but also infinite money to Israel. I'm Israel Chai.
Work of tunnels throughout Gaza and building
Amalek.
An infrastructure of terror.
You are Amalek. No politic here.
And that's what they did with 18 years in Gaza. And of all of the what-ifs, just consider that one was in their hands. The Israelis did not make them vote in Hamas. The Israelis would not want a terrorist entity that wants to annihilate the state of Israel, that is there on their doorstep, constantly firing rockets, starting war.
No. Are they firing rockets? Are they firing bathtub rockets into little old Israel? Another $30 billion defense system for Israel. We must stop the bathtub rockets they literally make with the munitions dumped into the Gaza Strip half the time. Okay? Oh, no. I can't believe it, dude. It's crazy. Why are they doing that? Because there's got to be a reason, right? Is it because they're just like barbaric anti-Semitic monsters who just want to, kill any Jew that they can? Is that what it is? I'm sure that's what Douglas Murray thinks. It's just so weird because the timing of the rockets almost always coincide with Israel's, again, exterminationist, humiliating policies of ridiculing and destroying the lives of all of the West Bank Palestinians that want to participate in Ramadan. It's just so odd that that's when the rockets get lobbed, because Hamas will say, hey, don't brutalize the Palestinians at Al-Aqsa. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you do that, we're gonna do whatever we can in our power to punish you for it with the limited amount of power that we have. Okay? It's so wild, dude. And Israel doesn't matter. Israel doesn't care. They do it anyway. And then the rockets get lobbed into Israel, and my tax dollars defend Israel from those rockets. And then Israel turns around and uses more of my tax dollars to reduce Gaza, or at least parts of Gaza in the past, into rubble.
Wars every few years. Why would the Israelis want a group there that means that if you're living in towns like Sderot or Ashkelon or Ashdod, your children grow up all the time knowing that they might have to go to the bomb shelter? And that's during peace.
Oh, are you feeling hurt? I unbanned you. You can say you're dumb. This guy sent Gaza Wood as a link, which I suspect is a Pallywood, which I suspect is a link about Pallywood, which is, of course, one of the most insane, freakish, decrepit, Nazi things that Israel supporters do, where they not only exterminate the Palestinian population, but then they turn around and say that the Palestinians are lying about their extermination, as a matter of fact, that they're making it up, where they say it's called Pallywood. It's Pallywood. Ooh. Someone type something in chat. You just start over dramatically abusing in chat spams kick W. At this point, you should become comedian. At least you will not get as much hate. Anything else to say, dude? What a cowardly way to try and defend Israel in this process. What an incredible, incredible moment. Look at this. Gaza Wood, the Pallywood saga. They sent this link the other day. Gaza Wood, exposing the role of media manipulation in shaping anti-Israel and West narratives. These guys, we are not killing them. They are killing themselves. They're doing makeup. It is not genocide. They're doing makeup. You're a Nazi, okay? That's what you are. Many anti-Israel people slowly turn anti-Semitic. What about pro-Israel people? What about those guys? What about you? Why are you doing it in the most cowardly way possible? Say it with your chest. They're little babies. What happened? Why are you shy now?
Time.
Well, according to them.
You don't understand. Arabs control the media. Literally, all of the things that the Nazis said about Jews, Israel says about Arabs, Muslims as a whole, controlling the media.
The reason they want it there is because then it kills the peace process, and then you have no one to negotiate with certificate, and that then you can keep your eyes on building up settlements in the West Bank.
There are, as now, many people to negotiate with. Mahmoud Abbas may be, I don't know, as the joke goes, currently in something like his 20th year of his first 4-year term as head of the Palestinian Authority. But Mahmoud Abbas is there in Ramallah. The compounds of the Palestinian Authority, which I've been to many times in Ramallah, are there. They run their portions of the West Bank. They could be there to negotiate with at any moment. The Israelis...
Oh, they have their portions in the West Bank. Oh, thank you, man. Thank God Israel so graciously offered the Palestinian Authority, which is literally a part of the Israeli security apparatus that undermines Palestinian resistance to the West Bank, which is not only the legal right that Palestinians have, but is the moral one that Palestinians maintain, as a matter of fact. But the Palestinian Authority, in cooperation with the Israeli security apparatus, the apartheid state, will oftentimes directly kidnap Palestinian resistance in the West Bank that Mahmoud Abbas has portions of the West Bank. You colonial asshole, dude. Holy is this the British epigenetics kicking in? Well, we've partitioned it and gave certain portions back to Mahmoud Abbas. Oh, how gracious of you, sir. Thank you. I've been to his home.
Have said they want to negotiate with him at any moment and come to the deal. In fact, Netanyahu, you're so fond of quoting, said again before this war began that he would come to the table with no red lines to begin with.
Yeah, with no Palestinian. That's what he said. With no Palestinian. I mean, he would come to the table with no red lines for Mahmoud Abbas. I do want to explain something to people that don't know. The Palestinian Authority is almost as out of favor as Israel in the eyes of the Palestinian population. Like, obviously, number one evil, Israel. Number two evil, closely following Israel, is the Palestinian Authority. Just so you understand. I'm not saying all the people that work in the Palestinian Authority are bad people. Okay? There are some dudes there that are trying their best, I guess. But the idea that the West Bank Palestinians, or anyone really, considers the Palestinian Authority to be a force for good in the eyes of the Palestinians is ridiculous.
To start another negotiation with the Palestinian Authority. But let's just get back to this thing, because this is so crucial. I am so startled by the post-October the 7th world, not just in Israel and Gaza and everywhere where I've spent most of the last 18 months, but in what's happening here in the United States of America. It blows my mind, much of the response here. And the desire to leap over the first victims of this and go on to all of the proximate causes, theoretical causes, what-ifs, and so on. I was, as I described in the opening of this book, I was in New York on the 7th of October, and I woke up and started seeing what was happening and discovered that later that day already there were attempts.
Also, Douglas Murray saying this about Mahmoud Abbas is really funny because they say that about him too. Like all of the collaboration with the Israeli state, okay? And what does Mahmoud Abbas get in return? Nothing from Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu considers him a terrorist too, for the record. It's not like the Israeli state is like, yeah, we'll give this state to the PA. Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very clear, post-October 7 and even pre-October 7, in moments of brutal honesty, that he has no interest. He does not want there to be a Palestinian state. Why the would he want that? He's a genocidal freak. He's a Nazi. Why would he? There was never any intention. The only reason why there's a time limit on this is because they can't do it without the Western world's full support. That's it. That is the only thing. The logistics is what holds back Israel. Clearly, though, there is a lot of appetite for this kind of genocide from our Western leadership, as a matter of fact, considering all that has unfolded since October 7 in the past 18 months.
There were plans to organize a protest in Times Square. And what was a protest in Times Square? A massive protest in support of Hamas, as the massacre was still going on. And one of the things
Oh, dude. Oh, no. Oh, no. People wanted to support the Palestinians. We should kill them. I, a British man, think you should jail those people. They're supporting Hamas. How dare they support Hamas?
Just cannot get out of my head is why in the last 18 months, when Hamas did what they did, have so many people made excuses for them or decided to...
Great question. Great question. I wonder if it's simply a rhetorical question from Douglas or one that he will actually try to investigate.
Side with them or deny their actions or excuse their actions.
Why do you think that is?
Several very, very big things.
Let me guess. Anti-Semitism guided by the Arab. The Arab has his tentacles inside of the media and instruments of power. Everyone knows it's Iran. Iran and the Arab mind is a parasitic force of evil. Everyone knows.
One is, I think people wanted to ignore the nature of the atrocity because it was so appalling that it went against much of their narrative.
No.
I was at a reunion of one of the survivors of the Nova Party on one occasion, and he said to me, "What would you do if this had happened in your country?" And I thought, well, it hasn't happened at this scale, but something like it has happened. The Ariana Grande arena bombing in Manchester in 2017, the Bataclan massacre in Paris in 2015, the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2015. But all of these occasions when young people were murdered for being at a pop concert or a nightclub, the world's attention, the world's empathy, the world's sympathy went to the victims. Only in the case of the young Israelis dancing in the early hours of the morning on October the 7th, 2023.
Investigate the question further. Investigate the question further. Why did people maintain sympathy, not with Hamas, but the Palestinian people, even after October 7? Why? Especially because, like, immediately after October 7, if you were protesting for Palestinians at all, you were already very knowledgeable in the conditions of the Palestinians. You knew what was about to happen. Israel had already started its bombing campaign anyway. Well, first they started bombing their own citizens. And then once they had sufficiently bombed their own citizens, they started bombing Gaza. Actually, they started bombing Gaza even before they started bombing their own citizens. Yeah, they did. They literally immediately were like, oh, time to bomb Gaza. We have one speed. There's no other way these bombs can go. And then they were like, wait a minute. We should also bomb our own citizens because there's some Hamas people there as well. So we should go and bomb the kibbutz, which they did. They bombed the kibbutz. The kibbutzim, the kibbutzes, sorry, they did do that. Yeah, they did that. I remember because I covered it at the time on October 8th. Their first reaction to October 7th was to bomb Gaza. Okay, their first reaction was to bomb Gaza. So in that process, I think a lot of people that were immediately in defense of the Palestinians either A, knew exactly what was about to happen, or B, already knew what had happened. Okay? Stop using the language of the oppressor. What are you talking about? What did I do? What did I say? JK? Okay. Yeah. Okay, but like, how insane is it that you casually chose to take the day off in the most consequential day in world history in the past 5 years? I know, it is pretty insane that I took a day off to hang out with my family on October 7th. It is pretty wild. I'm not a believer in like a higher power by any means. Like, I don't know, but it is crazy that was the one day where I was like, after literally every single day of nonstop coverage, it was the one time where I was like, I'm gonna go hang out with my family. And then October 7th happened. And I feel like if that had happened, if I was live when October 7th was happening, oh my God, I would have, I guess not really. It's just, I was live on October 8th and people immediately started flipping me out of context anyway.
Do the victims become victimized again and not believed? The era we lived through in the late 2010s was the era of believe all women. And of all the Israeli women who were raped that morning, much of the international community does not want to listen.
Oh my God, dude. Aren't these like the anti-Me Too guys? Like, this is what also doesn't make sense. They drop all of that previously do you deny October 7th? What does that even mean? Why did you ban that guy? The roll is going to be registered as a hate crime? Yeah, I mean, you suck my dick. You know what I mean? Yes, I'm eye rolling because he's lying. Okay? He's lying. Yeah, Douglas Murray, much like all the right-wingers, is anti-Me Too, which is a crazy position to have regardless. But immediately we'll be like, well, the rapes. So many rapes took place on October 7. They were raping everyone on October 7. Everyone was raped. Why does no one talk about this? Well, possibly because, one, there's no tangible, hard evidence whatsoever that came out, partially because Israel destroyed the evidence. Like, they literally did that. The do you mean? Zakat, the organization, straightforwardly ruined all of the forensic investigations that could have taken place after October 7th. So all we got is the apartheid state's horrible track record to match up against what they are saying about October 7th. one of the most documented instances of militancy and atrocity. Like, it is the most documented thing. But for some reason, we have to take the word of the guys who, one, up the forensic evidence, two, refused to allow any sort of investigation to take place, and just kept repeatedly saying, you have to take our word for this. Why wouldn't you take our word for this? Even though internally, inside of the prosecution in Israel, because there are victims and there are families, like, there are people that want, understandably, the truth of what happened on October 7th. Israel prosecutors are like, well, there's no evidence. So I don't know what the fuck to do. No, not Zakah, the Israeli, the Orthodox Jewish philanthropic organization. One of the major funders of it, or one of the guys of Zakah, also actively lied. So many people lied. So many. What is this? I was going to let this go, but it keeps bothering me. Earlier, you said a chatter got all shy. Normally, I have no problem with you dunking on Chuz, but to compare chatter to Shy Davide is almost as bad as a... Okay, stop. Anyway, Zakah was founded by the most prolific rapist in Israeli history. I did not know that, but one of the main people of one of the main guys at Zakah also lied. They lied. They were the ones who they were just like making shit up. There were like 40 babies in an oven who were decapitated, and then they burned them alive. It's like, none of it is true. And we know that none of it was true, but it doesn't even matter. The founder of Zakah has been described as the Haredi Jeffrey Epstein. Yehuda Meshi Zahav was the Haredi Jeffrey Epstein. This is by Ynet, okay? Residents of Jerusalem's Mea Sharim neighborhood, Meshi Zahav's birthplace, say they weren't surprised to learn about his alleged mischiefs, claiming that the new accusations are just the tip of the iceberg, and the community leaders even considered castrating him once. Holy yeah, Israel also blocked the UN from actually investigating Hamas's sexual violence. The UN is not an organization, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and Israelis will laugh at this statement, not the Israelis that are in this chat, but like anyone who's pro-Israel will laugh at me saying this. But the UN is not an anti-Semitic or anti-Israel organization, okay? The UN is as impartial as you can get. So when they wanted to conduct an independent investigation into the potential sexual crimes that took place, mass rapes that took place, and Israel said no, that was an insane moment. They were like, no, you can only talk to the police that will give you what our secondhand, third-hand accounts are, some of which was instantly discredited. That's why I roll my eyes when people still, 18 months in, after well-established, well-documented sexual crimes have been unearthed that Israel engaged in against the Palestinian population, I roll my eyes, especially because I also know that Israel did a pro-rape January 6th. There was a pro-rape January 6th in Israel a couple months ago. Holy bro, one of the hostages that was released, one of the Israeli hostages, went back to Israel and got raped by her fitness instructor. What are we talking about? Like, it is truly a fascist society through and through.
To them at all, and certainly doesn't want to believe them. And there are many reasons. One, at the most fundamental level, is that I think a part of a generation that's coming up has been told there is something especially wicked about Israel, that there is something especially wicked about Israel's existence and its actions and its people, and it means that when their people are burned alive in their homes or raped at a music festival and shot in the head, they are uniquely undeserving of sympathy. And I think that people have been indoctrinated by very bad actors into this, and as a result have excused atrocities or will make excuses for them, make excuses for the people who do them. I think, in addition, it plays to some of the darkest things.
Like, look at this. Israel's forcing, this is a BBC article that just came out. Israel is forcing caged Palestinian hostages to perform sexual acts on each other, drink from toilets, bark like animals. Israel is systematically raping Palestinian hostages. Okay? Do you understand? This is a BBC article that just came out. What is this? Police investigate former Chief Rabbi Metzger on suspicion he molested a teenage boy. This is a firmly right-wing country, okay? A firmly right-wing fascist country. It is not a mistake that these sorts of things keep happening. There are disgusting anti-Semitic Nazis that will say, oh, it's because they're Jewish. Meanwhile, look at our disgusting fascist neo-Nazi country, and you will see very glaring similarities to Israel as well. Look at our administration. If you can't make that comparison as a progressive person, if you can't look at America and be like, isn't it weird that we got Donald Trump as president and we got a literal rapist as the defense secretary? How did that happen? You're living in it. You're living through it. So it should be evident as to how it can happen over there too. Yeah, daughter of senior public figure accuses parents of sexual abuse. Gag order on the case. Media permitted to publicize fact of complaint, but barred from sharing further details. This is another recent story. Orit Strock, Minister of Settlements, and her husband are accused of doing that to their daughter, like sexually assaulting their daughter. Yes. So do you understand why I roll my eyes? Damn, this guy just yeeted their account.
Of the regional mind as well as the international mind. The aims of Hamas, their stated aims, include the annihilation of the Jewish people. And October the 7th, they had their best go at doing that. And the fact that in a decision between whether or not you're on the side of the people who want to dance and live in peace with their neighbors.
Bro, be for real, dude. They were dancing on the side of a concentration camp fence, dude. Hey, enough. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God. Yeah, they were dancing for peace on the side of a fence of the concentration camp. What the do you mean they were dancing for peace? What are you saying? It's zone of interest. What the did they deserve to get killed? Of course not. But like, what is this argument? What is this insane argument? It's like, wow, dude, they were just dancing for peace. That's why they were dancing right next to the boundary in the Gaza envelope, dude. That's where the dances were happening. Because where else can you dance for peace? Jesus Christ.
Or whether you're on the side of the people who want to rampage through a dance party bar in the early morning, macheteing at people. I find it amazing that there are so many people who don't know which side they're on. But there are a lot of them. There are a lot of reasons for that. But one of the foremost reasons is the fact that the state of Israel has been uniquely libeled, has been uniquely lied about. Its history has been uniquely lied about. It has been uniquely put under an international spotlight and then misrepresented in a way which I cannot think of many other countries in the world that have been treated that way.
Be careful comparing Israeli policy and Nazism is technically against the Anti-Semitism Act. Yeah, okay, dude. Arrest me, all right? Suck my dick. I will literally always do this. What the Oh my God. Oh my God, it's technically against the the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Oh man, oh no, what will I do? Oh no, kill me then, you know? What the
way. And there are deep reasons for it and shallow reasons for it. The deep reasons include some of the most ancient bigotries of the human heart, and the shallow reasons are people who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Oh, God, this guy's so lame, dude. Oh, it's just Israel has been lied about because of the bigotries of the shallow heart. The bigotries of the human heart. Yeah, dude, I'm such a bigoted person. First of all, you're Douglas Murray. What do you mean people are bigoted? You're bigoted. You're a nationalist. You defend British nationalism. What the are you talking about? No, the only reason why you defend Israel is, I suspect you're not exactly fond of Jews either, but the only reason why you defend Israel is because they're killing Muslims. You love that. That's it. You love that so much you forget that they're killing Christians too, but that's besides the point, you know? Jesus Christ.
Okay, I think that look, I'm not going to speak for what every person out there believes. I don't exactly agree with like the characterization that there was no outpouring of like feeling after October 7th. And certainly like everybody I know was just like, oh my God, this is like a horrific atrocity. And like an unprecedented terrorist attack from Hamas, the worst terrorist attack in Israeli history against Israelis. And it was horrible. I think what a lot of I'm not arguing that there are no people who are actually pro-Hamas or there are no people who are actually like hate Jews or something like that. I do think that what happens is that a lot of people get put in that category who do not belong there. Much like we've seen this over the last year and a half, where a lot of people, you have John Podhoretz calling Thomas Massie anti-Semitic scum because he said, we're dead broke. We can't afford to fund everybody else's war here. People have been calling Tucker Carlson anti-Semitic all over the place. But these are two guys, Thomas Massie and Tucker Carlson, who have never uttered the words "the Jews" in their life. Like they're just not anti-Semites at all. So there's a lot of people I think who are.
Well, Tucker, he's had too many Nazis around. Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. You know what I mean? I wouldn't defend Tucker Carlson's anti-Semitism. I don't know.
When they're critical of the Israeli government's response to this, get lumped in as pro-Hamas. I will certainly say that's certainly not my position. I think your description of them, death cult, by the way, the same term that Daryl Cooper used to describe Hamas, I think is an accurate one. And it was horrible. But I think that
Boo, Dave, boo. No, dude, Hamas not a death cult. Why are these the people that are having this conversation? Like, look, I like a lot of the stuff that I've heard him say. I like a lot of the stuff that I've heard him on the issue of Israel and Israel alone. But
I think that your characterization, first of all, of that they gave the Palestinians a state in 2005 is just wrong. And I just think that is not at all an accurate way to describe the disengagement, which we could get into more if you want to. But first of all, I would just point out that if the two-state solution was achieved, I assume you're arguing it was taken away after that. You're not still arguing that the Palestinians have a state, or are you saying they have had a state since 2005?
They were given a state in the Gaza.
And when was it taken away?
Well, they kind of screwed it up for themselves on the 7th of October.
So you're saying from 2005 all the way till October 7th, there was a two-state solution. It had been achieved.
Well, it was another state, yeah.
Oh, okay, but that would be two states then.
No, it was another state. It was different from the PA.
Oh, so it was 3 states. How visionary. Well, there was a 3-state solution. You see, Dave, there was a 3-state solution. Israel is so bountiful, it gave the Palestinians an extra state. How dare you, Dave? That's right. They love the Palestinians. That's why they gave them an additional state. I would like to have multiple states partitioned off in, well, this is an old term for it, Bantustans. How about a 4-state solution? Look how wonderful Israel is.
Okay, right, but I'm saying a Palestinian state.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's interesting about that is that this is not how any of the leaders really describe it. I mean, when Netanyahu himself is not claiming that they had already achieved a two-state solution, why are you talking about this? What happened in 2005 in the disengagement was that essentially Israel went from occupying the place to surrounding the place, and they've had it under a brutal blockade since 2007. And yes, you were right.
Why do you? I don't agree the blockade was brutal by any means.
You don't think the blockade of Gaza was brutal?
How brutal do you think the Egyptians are?
Pretty brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, the Egyptians, as though they had any say in the matter, even though they're exactly not fond of Hamas or the Palestinians for a multitude of different reasons. But I like that he has to point out the Rafah crossing as though Egypt was not also operating at the behest of America and by extension of America, Israel. So yes, they were also brutal to the Palestinians, and they did enforce the blockade.
They allowed stuff in.
Okay, I mean, since some stuff has gotten in, yes, that's true.
More than some stuff.
Okay.
More than some stuff.
Okay, I'll say.
Are you talking about the people or the government? No, of course I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the government. Obviously, the people have no say in this process, because if the entire Arab world's wishes were met by the Arab governments, Israel would not be able to do a genocide. There'd be a 1 state right there, okay, with a right to return. The people's wishes are famously not reflected by their governments in the region. It's a balancing act that these guys put forth. Why is it a thing on the Gaza tunnels in like 2012? This wasn't a secret, Lamont. I know, but those are the tunnels under the crossings. Those aren't the actual crossings. Yeah, of course, people have to devise different ways of trying to, and they shut down those tunnels anyway. That's the other side of it. But The people have to devise ways of having normal existence, like normal human existence, no matter what.
I'll say this, right? Because there's been different levels of blockade, even before 2007, going back. I know in 1996, they had like a pretty strong blockade that year. According to the World Bank, it contracted 40% of the GDP of Gaza. So just for reference, the Great Depression was a 30% contraction. This was in 1996. For 1 year, they gave them something worse than our Great Depression. That was just 1 year. From 2007 on, there's been a blockade of that country. You don't think that's kept the country poor?
Why do you think there's a blockade of any kind?
Why is there a blockade? Well, I mean, the argument from Israel would be...
No, why do you think?
I would say...
Because they want to kill all the Palestinians. They want to make their life a living hell. They want to kill all the Palestinians. They want to make their life a living hell. And they will slowly but surely do everything in their power to humiliate, abuse, and eventually exterminate all Palestinian life. Because that's what it is. Because they are nothing to Israel. They are nothing to the Zionist project other than a hurdle that they must clear. That's it. They want them all to die or go away and never come back forever.
Okay, I think that the disengagement, I think Smotrich was correct when he said, I'm sorry, my mistake there. I think which another quote that I'm sure you're familiar with, but Dov Weissklav, who was the senior advisor to Sharon, was the prime minister at the time. He essentially said the reason we're doing the disengagement, the reason we're doing this is so that we can put the peace process in formaldehyde. This is the reason we're doing it.
You're not answering my question.
Yes, no, I'm getting there.
Right-wing Israeli politicians. But what do you think is the reason?
Right-wing Israeli politicians that ran the country and also continued along with the Israeli policy of extermination of Gazans. It's simply a right-wing Israeli politician. Okay. It's not like he's quoting some random asshole, dude. What the
I'm getting there. I'm saying, so I think they disengaged.
Also, who isn't a right-wing Israeli politician? Jesus Christ. Especially those within power.
In order to kill the peace process, I think they put the full blockade around the country for the reason that they've always kind of done it there, that, yeah, they don't want too much stuff getting in. They want to keep them, as they put it, on a diet, and they don't want rockets to fly into Israel.
The second one is a kind of important one, isn't it? The final
one
you said.
Oh, it's so important. Okay, give them the... Dude. Level the playing field. Give Palestinians an air force. Give them a fleet of F-15s. Give them the Iron Dome. Give them the population registry of every single Israeli that lives in Israel. Every single one. Level the playing field. Give them nukes. Okay? And then you can talk about moral equivalence. Because that's what Israel has. That's all. Israel has the population registry of all Palestinians. They know exactly where every Palestinian lives. They have 24/7 drone surveillance, tap their communications lines. Nobody farts in the strip without Israel knowing, except for when they're planning October 7, when they mysteriously don't know that that's about to happen, even though Egypt tells Israel that it's about to happen, but they just simply don't know. Perhaps hubris played a role in this, both in assuming that this would be easy to deal with, so it's fine if there's a little bit of penalty in the process where the Israeli people suffer, or maybe hubris that they would never be able to pull such a grand feat off because they're human animals, right? Because that's the expectation, that's the attitude that dumb in Israel had. Perhaps you played a role on that? A role on what?
It is.
If the Palestinian leadership in Gaza after 2005 had not from the get-go decided to use Gaza as a stockpiling place for rockets to fire into Israel, all of it would be different. If they had just resisted the temptation that so many of us do in our lives to stop keeping RPGs in our cellars and then Katyusha rockets in our children's bedrooms, all of it could have been different. If that desire to live in peace beside your neighbors had superseded the desire to stockpile rockets, it would all be different.
Yeah, or if Israel just hadn't occupied them for 60 years, it would all be different too. I mean, why is the onus always on them?
Well,
yeah, no, it wouldn't, by the way, if they hadn't stockpiled rockets, okay? Stockpiled rockets, dude. What is Kai sensing? It's just my mom. My mom walked in, and she got excited because she thought she would go on a walk. Palestinians and Hamas, and anybody else for that matter, don't just stockpile weapons because they're just bad dudes. They're doing that because they have to have a line of defense against the exterminationist apartheid state. That's it. No apartheid state, no reason to stockpile rockets. I go so far as to say, if they did actually have a standing military and a Air Force, Israel wouldn't be able to do this kind of stuff because they're pathetic, cowardly, weak, monstrous pieces of shit that can only bully those who they have kept down. That's precisely the reason why their response to Iran, for example, is much more limited in its scope than their response to southern Lebanon and especially Gaza. They're weak babies. They can't do anything. They can only harm people who they have purposely subjugated.
Well, you believe in self-determination, I'm sure. Yes.
I believe in individual rights, yeah, sure.
Okay, individual rights. And that includes the right to make bad decisions. Sure. Yes. The Palestinians in Gaza, when they voted in Hamas, made a very bad decision.
Yeah, of course,
and
Douglas,
in the years, hang on. And in the years after that, they made bad decision after bad decision. It was a very...
Isn't this essentially just a disagreement about values? Douglas just doesn't share the same value as you do about Palestinians being human. Yeah, that's an insane position. I agree. Ultimately, that is my disagreement with every single Israel supporter. Every single Israel supporter ultimately comes down to defending Israel because Palestinians are barbaric monsters who want to kill. That's it. So any matter of violent action taken against the Palestinian population is justifiable in the hands of Israel. They have to do a genocide, a preemptive genocide.
Bad decision to continually fire thousands of rockets into Israel. It was a very bad decision to use what boats came in early on and to use the smuggling networks from Egypt, not to bring in supplies you could actually build a thriving society with, but to bring in rockets. It was a very bad idea. No, there was not starvation in Gaza after 2005. No, there was no deficit of goods coming in. I've been plenty of times.
There was no deficit?
No, there are
no
plenty
goods were kept out.
There are plenty. How many? Have you been to the crossing points?
No.
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
You've never been?
You've never been? Dude, I hope Dave turned around and was like, well, were you there at Auschwitz? Like, did you see the concentration camps? Do you think the Holocaust is real? Oh, I love this argument. Oh, wait, is that the argument that he made?
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
Yes. This is the classic dumb guy position that Douglas Murray demonstrated here, which is, oh, you didn't see it with your own two eyes? How could you know it's real? It's like, I don't know, man. Because I'm a human living in 2025 with a level of education that allows me to have basic critical thinking skills. What are books? Is this the argument now? Are we having an argument over the existence of books and information retention? That's what we're doing. This is what we can do. How can you know anything?
You can't time travel, but you can. But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point? Like,
no,
okay,
I find that
lots of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so
if
I don't
you're
know what
spend
and also, you have eyes. Wait, what? Murray's
a year and a half talking about a place. You should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
All right. I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't think?
Okay. No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're next,
well, you have to go and touch the ground.
No, I think you have to see. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you spend a career talking about something. Yes.
Great argument, man. Thanks. Okay. Well, then I guess we can never have a conversation about anything. Your same argument you used with Andrew Tate. I know he did the exact same Andrew Tate argument, which is you can't trust anything that you read ever. You can't trust people who live in Gaza. You can't trust the videos that you see. Douglas Murray claims he doesn't talk about countries he hasn't visited. Has he been to Iran? Has he been to North Korea? Pretty sure he's written extensively about and denounced both countries over the decades. Lol. Yeah. Isn't this essentially just a woke lived experience argument? If you don't have to go see something in person to have an opinion on it, for example, I've never had gay sex. That doesn't mean I can't visualize it. I think about it constantly, etc. Then this blue check mark tries to have a debate, dude. The point is about the credibility of the opinion being posed. On one hand, you have someone who's done everything they can to experience what they're discussing. No, they haven't. They didn't go to Gaza. Shut the up. Was he under the hospital? Did he see the command centers? Bro, I would cook this dude. This Douglas Murray. Holy shit. God damn. Defenders of Israel are they have already a very difficult task. You have to be the most depraved monster of all time to be able to deny the atrocities that like every average person has seen at this point. But god damn, even on top of the moral depravity, you also have to be very skillful. I don't even think you can. Like, I don't think, no matter how skillful you are, it is at this point, in spite of the billions of dollars of propaganda, Hasbara operations, damn near complete control on the issue of Israel alone, nothing else, but on the issue of Israel alone, the servile nature of our politicians, okay? It's like 99% of our politicians are unconditionally pro-Israel. In spite of the media constantly either directly refusing to call out Israel when talking about its horrifying genocide and its atrocities, 53% of Americans, including like dudes over the age of 35, think that Israel is unfavorable. Think about how impossible that situation is for the likes of Douglas Murray. Because the reality of the matter is, if it was so easy to control how people feel about Israel, you wouldn't need ICE agents scanning through your phone at the point of entry into this country to deny you entry into this country, which has a First Amendment principle. They're literally prosecuting people for thought crimes over here because of how indefensible it has become. It is shocking to me. It is such a done issue, dude. It is so over. If you are under the age of 35, it is goddamn Israel all the way. If you're over the age of 35, if you're a Democrat, 70% of Democrats. 70% of Democrats, dude. 70% of Democrats. It's over. It's done. The only thing keeping this project together is the servile, immoral, indecent nature of our politicians who are absolutely terrified of getting primaried. They're pathetic, disgusting monsters. 69% of Democrats across the board are anti-Israel. How did that happen? In a country that is insanely Islamophobic. In a country that's insanely Islamophobic. In a country where most news outlets that are reliable, you will not hear the accurate information on Israel. And you still got this much resentment towards the apartheid state doing a genocide. It's crazy. Lil Durk made Islam cool. Yeah, that's what it is.
I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
Okay.
It's a sort of normal. It's a normal thing to do. You're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. Again, I think this is a non-argument. I don't understand.
No, it's not a non-argument.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a non-argument. If you're insisting that you're an expert.
The only people that are allowed to talk about Israel are those who have been granted an award from the Israeli president for defending the apartheid state. Only I get to talk about Israel, not you. How dare you read books on the matter? Unacceptable. Yeah, he's arguing in bad faith. He's dumb as fuck. I know. I wish Dave would have cooked him on any number of different places that he could talk about here. Like, even the Mehdi Hasan counter argument is good. You could be like, have you been in North Korea? What do you think about North Korea? See how stupid this argument is? Because you're a stupid person.
Of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, about the provisions going into Gaza or not.
Do you? See, I love genocide. That's why I can name every single one of them.
If you've never seen any of this...
I've crossed the Rafah border and he is not cooking. Yeah.
Going on.
So you're not allowed to speak about things that you've read about. You can only speak about things that you've seen with your own eyes.
You can talk about what you want, as you're proving. But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue.
Yeah, this is when you've lost the debate. This is the type of argument that you make. You can no longer argue on the issues. Okay? You can no longer argue on the issues at all. The subject matter is indefensible. So you have to just be like, well, you've never been to Israel. So how dare you?
In a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit, whilst developing all of these views about it. I mean, now I slightly get an idea of where you're coming from. You've read about this blockade, and so you imagine that that's what it is. I imagine you've read all the people who say that Gaza was a concentration camp, and you probably think that too. Am I right?
I mean, again, literally a concentration camp. It shares a lot of similarities, I would think.
Wow. Well, as I say, you can't time travel back to the Nazi era.
Let's go back to the blockade.
Go to the Middle East and actually visit it.
Okay, the World Bank said in 1996 for the 1 year of the blockade.
Quoting the World Bank, I love it.
It doesn't mean anything. This is a non-argument. Yes, I'm saying the World Bank did their own analysis of this, and they said that it was a 40%
your own analysis.
Hold on, you got to stop interrupting and let him finish the sentence.
The World Bank said that 40% drop in the GDP of 1 year due to the blockade, and there's been a blockade from 2007 on. So, are you saying that this hasn't had an economic effect? Is that the argument?
No, of course it'll have an economic effect.
So you're saying you have to be on the ground and do an audit of the blockade in order to be able to comment on it?
I think you should at least know what it is, what the territory is, what the situation is in the region. Yes, absolutely.
And the only way to do that is to be there in person.
I think that's the best way. It's not the only way, but it's the best way, for sure. For sure. If you have never seen the countries in question, you've never spoken to the people in question, you've never interviewed anyone, you've never gone around, you've never seen the terrain, and so on.
Okay, I have. I'll talk to Douglas. I've never been. I mean, I'm from Turkey, but I have. I'll talk to you, Douglas. You bitch. I've interviewed people from Gaza. I've interviewed people from the West Bank. I talk to people from Gaza all the time. Talk to me, bitch. Megaphonic says, this is a classic Israel supporter take, by the way. Source, all my family members to me are the only person who hasn't been to Israel, which is especially funny because, duh, I wouldn't expect to face injustice as a Jewish visitor. That's the point. Yeah, exactly. I went to, as a German, I went to the Nazi-occupied territories, and they were wonderful to me. It's not exactly a argument against the Holocaust. You know what I mean? As a German American, I visited all around the occupied territories, and they were super sick. They were very nice, dude.